Have you ever wondered what latitude even means, or ever even wondered the actual implications to your health latitude actually has for yourself, for your body, for your physique, and even for your biological makeup as a human being, or even as a mammal, or whatever you believe you're in 2026? And if so, then I'm going to give you three reasons to why latitude is important to your health, as whatever you identify with. The reason why I'm making this video is because I do want to emphasize on the whole point of focusing on the kind of more kind of non-centralized, decentralized kind of health, because the last thing I want for people is to go to the gym, they do a workout, feel alright, they feel groggy, and then they pass out, or they have health implications, or they find out they have a certain disease or have certain problems in their body that they think they need to be solved through drugs, whatever. Obviously, I'm not trying to give professional advice, but I'm trying to help people in a very minute way, in a very acute way, to be honest, to where understanding these concepts of latitude and the other things, the other videos I'll be making on this channel, it'll really allow you to kind of understand what's important. So with latitude, the definition of latitude is the geographic coordinate that specifies the north and south position of a point on the Earth's surface. That is determined by how far away or how close the latitude point of a certain place on the Earth is to the equator itself. The reason why that's important is because, well, the first reason to why it's important is due to the fact that the equator basically highlights to where the sun is most present. So if you look on the map, you'll have, I'll basically look for myself as well just to make sure that I'm highlighting and saying the right things. If you're someone who is living in the northern hemisphere, which are mainly 50% of the world's population, with the likes of America, Canada, not Greenland, Iceland, you got the UK, you got all of Europe, you got Russia, you got Kazakhstan, Mongolia, parts of China, South Korea, Japan, you got obviously America, Canada, you got bits of Mexico, you got Alaska as well, just part of America, anyways. You got Europe with Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, Ireland, Germany, all these Western, Eastern European countries, like so the Caucasus, Turkey. Well, not Turkey. Turkey's not. Well, Turkey's more Middle Eastern, but with these Northern Hemisphere countries, the only way you can actually be exposed to sunlight is during the summer months, during June, which is this month, to August, even September, or even May, depending on how close you are to the equator itself. As the first reason is the equator determines of how much sunlight, purple and red UV light is present, depending on where you're based in. And for those countries, the actual metric to those latitudes, to the latitude of that range of the northern hemisphere is typically between, I'd say, 35 degrees to definitely over 60 degrees of latitude. And by the way, 60 degrees latitude is pretty much the Scandinavian countries of Norway, of Sweden, of Finland, Iceland, countries that are very close to the North Arctic, the North Pole. Even though that's a lot more controversial now if you understand magnetism and the fact that magnetism, the North Pole was shifted from Canada to Siberia, but that's besides the point. The main focus on this video is just to highlight, the fact that the first reason latitude is important is because it really kind of highlights and shows you your window to how much sunlight you'll be exposed to and how much sunlight you'll be able to expose yourself to. So if you're living in the UK or in France or Germany or whatever, in Europe or all these countries I highlighted before, you have a very small window to allow yourself to be exposed to the sun But if you're closer to the equator, and mind you, the equator, I'm going to list out the countries that are very close to the equator or even have the equator, is the likes of Ecuador, Colombia, Brazil, what else? Equatorial Guinea, you got DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, you got Gabon, you got Republic of Congo, you've got Kenya, you got Uganda, Somalia. You also have oh no, not Malaysia, nearly, pretty much. You got Indonesia, pretty much Singapore, very close to the Philippines, very close to Papua New Guinea. Um, is there any other places? Very close to Samoa, Hawaii, but these these countries are very close to the equator. So even likes of Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, you got India, you got Sri Lanka, you've got Mauritius, Reunion, you've got well, Mauritius, Reunion actually quite far away from the equator. Also, you got South America, but I'm not trying to tell you countries to live in because the actual legitimacy of latitude and haplotypes and where you should be living in terms of the tropics is a lot more complicated now due to new studies based upon certain other topics I want to go into with this channel, with these YouTube videos, and even with the Instagram, my Instagram as well, and Garcia Lashley, which will still be posting the same content. But the main thing is that I want you to be aware of where the equator is. I want you to be aware of the countries that are there. And I want you to notice some patterns with the next reason, which is the second reason to why latitude is important is because it affects the hormonal system and it affects your health in general. For example, with the hormonal system, the latitude shows you where the sun is more present and where it's less present. So, with countries that are close to the equator, the sun is always going to be present because it's very close to the equator and the sun has no troubles or no kind of friction in terms of being present in those countries, like with I would say, with Ecuador. The sun is always going to be present. There's only going to be two seasons. It's going to be a season of sun, which is going to be summer, and might be a season of rain, or even like with a country like Malaysia, where the south of Asia, the southwest, the southeast, and the south of Asia has the monsoon season. That's basically the second, only the second season for these type of countries because they have constant sunlight due to being very close to the equator itself. And when you understand that the sun has a massive implication for health, which hopefully you guys do understand on a very basic simpleton level, you'll understand that the latitude highlights where the sun will be more present throughout the year, the calendar year, of course, throughout time. Also highlights the presence and impact of how much sun someone will be exposed to their eyes, to their skin, to their brain, to the organs, and to the hypothalamus especially. Because the hypothalamus is actually connected to the pituitary gland, which actually controls most of the activities of the hormones inside your body. Due to the fact that the sun is the main energy source that allows the hypothalamus, allows your brain, allows your heart to run properly. Um, I don't really want to get into too much detail of that. I don't want to make this video turn into a whole massive plethora of you know open cans of worms falling out and getting onto this table and get onto this video, to be honest, as a metaphor, of course. But the main thing for you is to understand that the sun will allow your body to function more properly due to the fact that it enables your hormones to activate, along as if your skin, like with your hands, of your ideally most of your body, and also with your eyes. So for this, I will recommend you to actually not even use sunglasses, to use sun lotion to cover your skin too much when the sun is present. And obviously, if you have certain health conditions or stuff like that, your GPs gives actual professional advice that helps you to live longer, not to depend on drugs. I would recommend you guys to do that, of course, if you have any actual health implications that will need you to do these things to live. But for most people, that's not the case. So, especially during the summer, um, I'm in the UK right now. It's raining right now, of course, typically. Happens nearly 300 times a year. But exposing your skin and exposing your eyes will massively help with your health in general, allow your body to actually function properly because your body is a lot more advanced and it's a lot more sophisticated than you think it is. Um, with the hypothalamus being connected to the pituitary gland, it basically allows all the hormones and most of the hormones in your body to activate properly and allows all those hormones to activate in your own endocrine system. As the hypothalamus is the main master of this gland, it sits on top of this gland. So the pituitary gland is here, it sits on top of it, and also is connected within your brain itself, inside of your head, of course. And and this will only occur, this will only happen properly, optimally, in a sophisticated way if sun is present to your eyes and to your skin. So if you're indoors, if you're exposed to certain elements that I'll get into with future videos of ways to reduce, of course, in the near future, then you're not going to get as much benefits. You may suffer from gaining fat, or bad circadian rhythm, or darken of the eyes, or bad skin, or even really bad cases with certain health conditions or certain autoimmune diseases, which is mainly the third reason that the latitude is important, because it's kind of your gateway to understanding what diseases, autoimmune diseases, and other diseases that may be present within the place that you live in, or within the different countries that are close to the equator and are further away from the equator. For example, with higher latitude countries, which is the northern hemisphere, with the likes of Europe, North America, uh, North Asia, especially with Russia, I'd say Mongolia, Kazakhstan, all these countries, and even with South America, I'd say with I'd say maybe more kind of southern Africa, especially with the implications of magnetism, which I will get into on a decent level, just enough for you guys to understand with a future video, near future video, even with the likes of countries of like Australia and New Zealand, especially with Australia, when people assume that it's sunny all year round because it's a massive it's basically like a massive continent. The sixth biggest country, and it's basically a desert. So people would assume that sun is always be present, but it's more of the implication of understanding about latitude, and that it kind of highlights where the sun is present. But it's not everything, of course. And there's a lot more things that get into health and determines how you may get sick or how you may get better. But it's a good introduction to this kind of, health kind of different kind of paradigm, different lens of seeing it. Because, for example, the high latitude countries I'm actually going to get into now, that you have more chances of actually having cardiovascular disease, of having cancer, of having diabetes. Obviously this is not serious. Well, it depends. Irritable bowel syndrome, or bowel disease, where your gut, where your stomach, where your digestive system isn't aligned, and it has lots of chronic pain and inflammation. That is mainly due to a lack of sunlight and your body's inability to absorb sunlight due to different factors, like magnetism, or from EMF, or from too much indoors, or from too much heavy metals, or from many different aspects that we'll get into in the future videos. But the thing is, obviously, with the lower latitude countries, there's also risk as well. The main risk of those countries is mainly comes from the insects. Mainly comes from mosquitoes and malaria and dengue disease, and many comes from the animals and the wildlife and the forest, just due to how diverse, um, how many insects, how many animals, mammals, how much life and nature there is in these countries, in lower latitude countries, due to the nature and due to the territory that comes with. an abundant amount of sunlight. It creates that kind of competition. It can also cause diseases to occur naturally or not naturally from labs. Anyways, but the main thing for you is to understand that where you live, where you are, does have effects. It has benefits. It has consequences, and those benefits and consequences can be a lot more damaging. It can be a lot more beneficial if you use it to your um to your own benefit, to your own to your own physique or to your own biology, to your own kind of even I would even say color of your skin because it determines how much melanin you have inside of your body, in the inside and the outside. Um, Obviously, if you have more darker skin, you have more melanin outside of your body. So the amount of sunlight that you need to absorb is going to be 3 times more than someone who has pale skin, someone who's white or has pale skin in general. So you do kind of have to think about these things, and they'll put you in a decent mindset, to be honest, as one of the first kind of what you call it. This is obviously the first decentralized kind of health video, so I think this is gonna end. I don't think I can add any more, to be honest, to this video. I think that I know this video isn't as yappy or as kind of free flowing, I guess, in my opinion, just due to the fact that the advice or the points I had to make in this video had to be a lot more constructive and kind of sophisticated and more not robotic, but it had to be a lot more straight to the point to ensure that people wouldn't, you know, assume that I'm just making the assumptions or people are thinking I'm giving professional advice. It's mainly patterns of noticing the patterns, noticing what's occurring through studies, through actual data, not through assumptions, not through bias, but through observing nature, observing people, observing diseases, observing people when people feel better, um, observing reality really, and not taking everything literally, and always questioning if something is right or wrong. Even with this video, I want you to think that way. If he, is this guy really saying something that's true or not, or something that is as detailed as not? And I don't mind the criticism, to be honest. And I was just checking the time. As long as if you're able to understand that and able to think that way, with first principle thinking or just common sense, or with putting yourself in not in my shoes, but putting yourself in your own shoes and really kind of understanding the implications and the pros and the cons of taking certain decisions, even if it's coming from a professional, hospital, doctors, GP, you still have to question those things. And that's the main thing I want you guys to understand. And obviously, I'm not going to be someone who's going to, you know, sell you creatine gummies and supplements and all that stuff, because all of that stuff is not natural. The only thing I will be selling is just probably coaching in the near future and future digital products. But apart from that, I can't really think of anything else, to be honest. And I do want to illustrate that to make sure that you guys understand. Also, if you watch the intro video, you would understand where this direction of this channel is going to be. But the main thing is to basically help people with body transformations, but through the gym. Obviously, the gym is, in my opinion, a very controversial place to even be training in the first place. Especially with these videos, you kind of understand that I'm not contradicting myself, but with the data, with the stuff I've been learning, with the research, with the stuff I've just been observing in general from my own life without having that intention, um, that I'm gonna have to kind of illustrate things in a lot more of a detailed way to ensure you guys kind of understand the real implications of daily life, um, in the city compared to not compared to countryside, but making sure you guys kind of understand what's really happening. Because I'm seeing a lot of stuff online where there's a shift to peptides, GLP-1 drugs, and still kind of thinking that the gym is everything. And obviously, that's contradictory to this channel because I'm going to be a personal trainer. But this YouTube channel is really my gateway to kind of expressing my paradigm that isn't based upon bias in terms of just my point of view, in terms of what I like. It was more based upon what's healthy. And yeah, I think that's everything, to be honest. I can't really think of anything else. Hopefully that video made any sense, but I think I just had to kind of ramble there for a bit. So I think that's everything to the three reasons why latitude is important to your health. And this is going to be the theme of these type of videos. It's going to be obviously be more constructive with more of the data I collect within myself, within the things that I'm doing to improve my health. Obviously, it comes. Obviously, I'm not going to focus on myself. I want to try and help people as much as possible. Obviously, this is not professional advice. This is not professional advice. Not professional advice. Not professional advice. Um, but this is going to be part of the channel. And if you don't know that, then you should watch the intro video. I know it's like 17 minutes long, but let me yap. So I think that's everything. And yeah, see you guys later. Peace.